Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and I will be your guide on this journey from cluelessness to consciousness and back around again. Today on the podcast, I am joined by John Rush. John is a professional football player in Canada who is an advocate for the vegan lifestyle, ending violence against women, and for adopting dogs out of shelters. You can hear some appearances by his dogs in the background once in a while. Here we go. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me
No problem.
on this new adventure. I appreciate you being willing to be like, sure, that sounds interesting. I'm in.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this with you. It's always fun doing new things and new concepts with new people because you get to learn a lot more from all the different perspectives, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. It's called Consciously Clueless. And for me, that just means like this honest place to explore those moments that we learn and we feel like we're like consciously moving through life and we're killing it. And then those moments where we feel totally clueless and like we have no idea what's going on, and then like everything in between.
Yeah.
So given that description, how are you feeling right now? Like where on that spectrum are you feeling?
It's kind of interesting because I kind of feel perpetually clueless, even though I've gotten to do and experience some pretty amazing things in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that I'm always there's always, I don't want to say someone better out there, but there's always someone more knowledgeable. There's always someone that's better at their craft, that does whatever it is that I'm trying to do better than me. So I always find that I'm kind of just always playing catch up in a sense. So I find for myself personally that I'm always in that kind of clueless state. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing myself, because it just forces me to keep exploring new things. But it can be frustrating at times when you feel like you're never, I don't want to say satisfied, but you're just like kind of never there. You're always searching for something.
Yeah, one of the things I learned when I was going through my yoga teacher training was this idea of being content.
Mm-hmm.
And when they talked about it in the training, it was as if this was a thing to aspire to. And my immediate reaction was, what? To just be content? That's never something I thought of as being okay with, but it's hard to find that balance where you're like, oh, I'm content with where I'm at. I feel like I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, especially as an athlete, because just as an athlete, right, you're always looking, you always want to, get a better personal record. You always want to beat that other record. You want to be the best on the team, then the best in the league, and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to be content when you're constantly comparing yourself, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, in that vein, full disclosure, don't know as much about football as I should going into this interview, but I was like doing research and looking up your stats, and I know enough to know that you're a damn good football player. So
I appreciate that, but it's interesting because when I look around our locker room, I don't like it's hard to describe. It's just like I don't even see myself as a good football player in that locker room because I'm just surrounded by so many amazing football players. So it's kind of funny how that you can kind of get that mentality sometimes when you're actually good at something, but you're surrounded by so much, quote unquote, better people that you just don't even realize it yourself.
So how did you get into professional football in Canada? I should say in Canada for people listening too.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's it was a long journey for me. I started playing football when I was like 9 years old with my brother. It was always, something we always wanted to do was play football professionally. And then went to the University of Guelph at 17 years old, started and played there. Tore my ACL my third year, thought I wasn't going to play football anymore. And I missed my draft year because of it. So I didn't get drafted, had to go back for a fifth year of university. Finally got invited to a camp, went to the camp, I got cut. And then I took it like not like a year off, but I I ended up just like finishing my degree and just working out. And then I got re-invited to the same camp, and I finally made it that year. That I've been in pro sports ever since. So
Okay.
it's been a long and winding journey, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we've chatted so far, you've talked about, comparing yourself and it's hard to be content, but it sounds like obviously you're good enough to get there and be invited back and like persevere through all that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, yeah, but at the same time, like it's such a weird feeling because like you're when I was like young or whenever I was in the university, it was always like, oh, get to the CFL, get to the CFL. Like
Mm-hmm.
then I've made it. You know what I mean? Like then I know I made it. But now that I'm in the CFL, it's different. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now I'm here. Now it's something else. Now I have to get somewhere else. And it's like, so it's like, yeah, like I'm good enough, but like in my mind, I'm not.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
think you'll ever reach that point where you feel like, oh, I'm good enough? What does that feel like?
I, I honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that's just like my personality where I just can't stop. Like I can't stop whether it's like learning or doing more or doing something else. I don't know if that's just like a personality trait because like I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't been doing something and trying to
Mm-hmm.
get better at something. So I don't I don't know if there will ever be a time in my life where I stop and just kind of enjoy the moment.
Right.
It's
Well,
difficult.
yeah, well, and definitely I think in our society we're taught to have that drive, right? Where we're always
Mhm.
it's that achieve, 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 achieve in our Western culture, which is sometimes really good, but I know for myself is sometimes my detriment because I start treating things like they're just on the to-do list.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're not enjoying doing them. You're doing them because they're doing something else for you, right?
Right, exactly. And all of a sudden you look around, you're like, oh, I've done some cool things. What like I didn't slow down
Oh,
to appreciate it.
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's like even this year when we won the Grey Cup, like it it was such a surreal feeling, and it was so crazy that it was difficult to slow down and
Mm,
appreciate the moment, like because there was so much other things going on. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. So, continuing on with the conversation about football, you also use your social media platforms to talk a lot about being vegan and plant based. So,
Yeah.
I definitely want to dive into that. But when I think of you being a football player and doing that, I'm really curious. Like, I love the intersections of people's identities. Like, that's part of this too, right? Like, that's a really fun intersection. And I'm curious what that's like on the football team. Like, have you gotten pushback? Have you converted
Honestly,
anybody?
it's honestly pretty interesting because I actually hid it for the entire first year. I didn't let anybody know I was vegan, and
Hmm.
we get fed breakfast and lunch when we're at the stadium because we show up at like 6 in the morning, and then we go until like 3 in the afternoon. So we don't really have time to make food, right?
Right.
So we get breakfast and lunch while we're at the stadium, and like I would just like pick around the food that I could eat. Like they always had like a salad bar that had chickpeas and whatever. Like
Hmm.
they had oatmeal every morning that I would eat. Like I love oatmeal anyway, so it was perfect. So like I never really like said anything the first year because I honestly thought I was gonna get cut for it. I
Oh,
thought they would,
wow.
yeah, like I thought if they found out I was vegan, they would cut me. Um, but then I obviously started posting about it on my Instagram, so like kind of like word slowly got out into like the next coming years of me playing. And it was actually kind of funny. Like no one really had the conversation with me, but then all of a sudden they just started having like vegan options out of nowhere. Like like the chef was just like, "Oh hey, we have Beyond Meat burgers today," and I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "There's only two," so
Grab
I'm
them
like,
now, John.
yeah, I'm like, okay, so that's definitely for me. Like,
So what would
so
make you think you might be cut? I'm so curious.
well, I mean, like, there's just like there's like a huge stigma around uh, veganism in
Hmm.
general, but especially with the whole you can't get enough protein thing. And I thought if they found out I was vegan, and they might just, think I wasn't taking football seriously or something or the other. It's sports is a very cutthroat world. It's
right.
You can get cut for much less than that. So it's just it was just something I was just very aware of in my mind of, I didn't want to jeopardize my income, because that's, how I was paying the bills, and
Right.
because I wasn't eating animals anymore. And but honestly, it was like, once they found out, like, no one said anything. Like, none of the coaches, none of the management, they all like were fine. And like, most of the players just like asked me about it. They're like, how do you get enough protein, dude? Like, it was more just like general curiosity, being like, because like, obviously in football, in sports in general, but football predominantly is like very testosterone driven, very like macho man. Like,
Right.
you need to eat steak, you need to eat, a chicken and broccoli at every meal, stay lean, blah, blah, blah. And like, we've been force fed that information since we were like 8. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's all we ever, like, that's all a lot of us ever knew. So if you don't actually go out and do your own research, you just blindly believe that stuff, right? So for me, now talking to these guys, I'm kind of like educating them and being like, yeah, like, it's like, I'm like, you could be surprised at how much protein there actually is in other foods.
Right.
You just were never told this. Like, you were always told chicken was a source of protein. That's it.
But nobody can ever actually tell you how much, unless you're like an athlete. I
Yeah.
love, though, when people are like, where do you get your protein? And then if you ask them, like, well, how much protein do you get from your meals? They're like, I'm not sure.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like the classic, like, someone's, crushing like a Big Mac or something. And then then you're being salad, and they're like, oh, like, where do you get your protein? It's just like, dude, there's like no protein in that. Like, So like, it's just kind of like, we've just been fed this narrative, right? That you can only get protein from meat. So like, almost all the guys, they're just generally curious.
Right. I bet.
So it's honestly been great. Like, I haven't converted anybody, but a lot of the guys eat like a lot more plant-based now. It's obviously becoming a lot more mainstream now too,
Right.
with athletes, with like the game changers coming out.
So cool.
A lot of, it was awesome, right? And a lot of athletes in like the NFL and stuff like that are going vegan too. So kind of like that trickle down effect, right? Like, if all the biggest athletes in the world go vegan, then like, it kind of trickles down to all the other athletes. And so it's been kind of cool to watch from my perspective, because I've been vegan for 4 years now.
It sounds like to me what you're identified a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that connection to masculinity and veganism, that like interesting part. You said the, football, like macho, manly. And I think there's such a stigma around those two things, like not being able to coexist.
Yeah. 100%. Like, guys ask me all the time about like tofu and soy, and how it increases estrogen, and like, they're like, it's honestly at points almost comical how like, one, just like uneducated they are on these topics. Like, they don't even know. But at the same time, how crazy the misinformation campaign has been against like soy and veganism, and calling people soy boys and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, man, like, it's such an easily disproven theory that it like, it hurts sometimes. But like, I eat almost a block of tofu a day. Like, I love tofu. I eat like a block of it a day. I'm 230 pounds. I've been 230 pounds. I have the best shape of my life. I don't have man boobs, and I'm doing it for 4 years. So, like, you know what I mean? Like,
scratch that off the list. It's not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So, I mean, I think it's hilarious. If soy gave people like bigger breasts, you don't think every plastic surgeon in the world would be out of business?
Good point.
Like, it's so like, sometimes it's like, thinking about it now, it seems so ridiculous, but at one point I believed all that stuff too.
Oh,
same. I was right there with them. You know what I mean? So like, it's crazy to think about. It's crazy to see like how attached we have this this male ego to like the need to eat meat. It's crazy. It honestly is crazy.
So what got you to turn vegan? What was that journey like?
It was actually kind of funny. Like I fought it for a long time. I made fun of my brother and his wife did it for a month because Beyonce was like into it. So they read her book.
Thanks, Beyonce.
Yeah. But I made fun of them endlessly, like, 5 or 6 years ago when they did it. I'm like, oh, you can't get enough protein. Like, you guys are idiots, blah, blah. I had a trainer that just happened to be vegan. I didn't even really know he was vegan, actually, until he started talking to me about it, like, probably 6 months into it. I needed to lose weight. I needed to lose like 25 pounds in a couple months. He's like, dude, why don't you try and go vegan and see? He's like, you've literally tried to do everything else. He's like, you've tried everything else to lose weight. It's not working. Like, go vegan. I'll help you do it. Like, if we do it right, you'll be able to keep your strength. And he's like, try it for a month. And if you like love it, just keep doing it. If you hate it, just stop. Like, he's like, no harm in trying.
Low stakes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I tried it, and like within the first week, I just I felt I hadn't lost any weight, but I felt like I lost 10 pounds. I was like, damn, like I feel great right now. And then I have arthritis in my knees through football.
Right.
Like it's just like wear and tear on the body. It's terrible for you. So my knees are shot, and they hurt all the time. But like once I went vegan, like they stopped hurting. So my body started to feel amazing. I was like, this really weird thing happened too, like where no one's actually been able to tell me why, but like for the first month I went vegan, I was only sleeping like 5 hours a night, but I was like waking up, like I slept like 12. Like I woke up so refreshed. It was like a really weird thing. Like I was dating a girl at the time, and like I kept saying, I'm like, man, like I didn't get to bed till like 3 last night, but I feel amazing right now. Like, I don't know what's happening. And I thought it was like all going to catch up on me and stuff. And like,
yeah, like you were going to crash.
Yeah. And it just never did. And I'm just like, man, like what the heck? And like, I was lifting weights, like more weights in the gym, and I was recovering faster. I was never sore after workouts. And I'm like, all right, like maybe these guys are onto something. And like, obviously like I'm a huge like dog lover. And, like
we can hear him in the background.
Yeah. So I started doing research on all that stuff and animal rescues and like how cows have best friends and pigs are smarter than dogs. And I'm just like, man, like that's tough. Like how can I talk about dogs and save dogs and, all this stuff about dogs when there are other animals suffer in the exact same way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then, like, not only that was actually like right around the time like the UN released their like the world has like, I don't know, it was like 10 years to like reverse climate change, or like we're all like fucked basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, like it's becoming really difficult to like have an argument against this. You know what I mean? I was just like the only argument that I ever understood for the first year of being vegan was the taste thing. I was like, man, like vegan food just wasn't tasty.
Right.
I would love to crush like a Domino's pizza with extra cheese and like, I'm sorry, but like vegan cheese is trash. Like it's not the same as crushing a pan pizza from Domino's. Like,
for sure.
But like I also didn't necessarily explore, and it was my own fault. It was really my own fault. I didn't explore out of my box in my area, and like that was the problem, that I wasn't like trying all these new recipes. I wasn't trying to garner a new palate and a new kind of appreciation for food, because really you have to reteach yourself how to cook and how to do everything, right? Like what foods go with what foods, because like how you associated food before, it was always like, okay, what goes with meat? This meal, like what in this meal is going to go with meat? What is going to go with chicken? What is going to go with this steak? And all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. And then all of a sudden the what is going with it is the main part. And you're like, shit.
like what is even going on this plate? I'm just used to making a bunch of sides.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yep.
So it was like really difficult. But then after like a year went by, I actually ended up meeting the Edgy Veg, and I got connected with her, and I bought her cookbook, and that was the first cookbook I ever bought, actually. And
it's a pretty good start.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I was like, oh shit, like vegan food's good. You just have to like reteach yourself how to cook and how to, what goes with what. And from there it was like a lot easier. And that kind of brought me to now where I'm, making my own recipes and kind of doing a food blog myself.
Yeah, your Instagram, like, let's talk about that. You're killing it. Like, you're turning into a home chef. Let's just call it.
Yeah, I'm basically as domestic as it gets at this point. I don't know, like during when quarantine started, I had a ton of time, and like I do love cooking. I always like growing up, I cooked in the kitchen with my mom all the time. And then recently when quarantine started, I just started cooking like a lot more. And then, people started asking me for recipes and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, like I should probably start a food blog. Like
Yeah.
I always vowed to not start a food blog because of how much effort it was. I'm just like, man, like I do not want to do this.
And yet here you are.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like now I'm doing it. But like, it's been a lot of fun so far. I have about, I'm trying to look, I have a list right here beside me of all the recipes I'm working on. And I have a list of about 150 recipes that are like not like ready to go, but like in the bank and like I've been working on. And then I have about 25 that are ready to get uploaded. I just like, the hardest part is like taking the pictures. That's what I'm not good at.
Yes.
So like you go to these other tools, like you go to Candace's website or Instagram, and like they're like the nicest pictures ever, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't got that.
I know. Whenever I make something and I'm like, oh, I want to share this, and you take a picture, and I'm like, oh man, these just look like shitty waffles. Like I was so excited.
Oh, exactly, right. You're like, wow, these taste so good, but they do not photograph well, and that's what I'm kind of trying to do now.
Sounds like you're basically on your way to a cookbook.
Well, I don't know about cookbook, but maybe one day. It's gonna be fun though because like I have a job, so it's always fun doing all this stuff like this like influencer stuff because like I just think it's hilarious because I have a job, and it's not that I don't care about it, but like I don't it's not my full-time job, so I only support brands and do brand deals with brands I actually
Right.
like and enjoy. Like I'm not just like promoting whatever. Like the other day I promoted Beyond Meat. That was like now at Safeway, right? Like yeah, I literally ate Beyond Meat again yesterday. Like I eat Beyond Meat like almost every
You're
day.
doing
like,
it because you believe in the brand.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, and I'm able to do that because I have a job. I'm actually, when I start this food blog and I'm going to have like ads on it and stuff like that, all the AdSense revenue from the blog is going to go to rescues. Yeah, it's called Rescue Dog Kitchen. And all the AdSense made from it, like after I pay off like, the hosting service and, all the expenses of buying groceries, all the excess revenue goes to a dog rescue. And I got to figure out still how that's going to work, like how we're going to pick who it goes to and when and where and kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of the plan right now.
That's amazing. So how did you get into rescue work? I know that Bone takes up a lot of your Instagram, and as he should.
He's great. I love Bone. He's one of the best things that's ever happened to me, that's for sure. But how I started, actually, I started when I was 9. I was a needy little kid. I was so needy. I will be the first to admit it. I don't know how my parents dealt with me. I was a lot. And
I relate.
Yeah. And I begged them for a dog. Like for years. I begged them for a dog, and I'm the baby. So eventually they conceded. I was not. But their one stipulation was that we had to adopt it, and at that age, I was kind of just okay. I don't care.
Yeah, like I'm getting a dog. Okay.
Yeah, right. Like, but then when we adopted him, and then then I grew up with him. He was my dog. It all became. It started to make more sense to me. The whole adopt don't shop thing. And then just kind of flourished from there. He lived till he was 14. Actually, like he was a sweet dog. Yeah, he was great. He died when I was in my 3rd year of university. So that was tough. And then I didn't get another dog until Bone, actually. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So so that was kind of where it started. I was just like, I was just needy.
What a cool thing though for your parents, like, it's becoming more and more popular to talk about adoption and stuff, but
Yeah.
even just to say like, okay, well, if you want a dog, we're going to adopt. Like, what a cool thing for a young kid to learn, because that obviously planted a seed.
No, for sure. And that's just kind of like, it goes to show like how much like impact parents can have on their
Mm-hmm.
children, just by showing them how to, live their lives in the right way. You know what I mean? It really doesn't take that much. It's not like my parents had to have this like big long conversation with me about the importance of adopting. Like, when you're that young, you just like pick up on things like inherently, right?
Right.
So like, you adopt a dog, you just understand that that's like, and then you grow to love them, and as they grow up, it's just like, man, like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, everyone should be, if there's a dog in a shelter, everyone should be adopting first. Like, it
Right.
should be like a law that you have to prove that you try to adopt a dog before you go buy a dog.
Yes.
Like that, that's how it should work. Like, it won't, because capitalism and whatever, but that's like, if people were serious about wanting to help dogs and stuff like that, like, that's what we should be lobbying politicians for.
That's really interesting. Are there kill shelters in Canada?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're um I know Quebec's really bad for kill shelters,
Okay.
still, but most places only kill if it's necessary. Like, I know um Winnipeg, like, especially the Winnipeg Humane Society, is technically a no-kill shelter,
Mm-hmm.
so they won't kill a dog if they don't have to. But if that dog has, if it's bitten somebody, if it's been, super aggressive towards
Right.
other dogs, and showing that, and there's nothing they can do, or it's the situation was so bad that they have to put it down. That's when they'll do it,
Right.
which is, it's still super unfortunate, but at the same time, at least, I know there's a lot of places, in like other like states and provinces will just because it's been in the shelter too long, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Bone. Bone was in Quebec, and he was in a shelter for too long, and he was about to be euthanized, and another shelter from Ontario picked him up and brought him back.
Oh my God. How was that sweet dog in a shelter for too long?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know how I got so lucky with him. Like, he's literally like the best looking. Like, he's super calm. He's great with kids. He has
Mm.
zero aggression. Like the family that got him purebred said he at 6 months was too big, and that's why they were giving him up.
Oh, that's like one of my pet peeves. Like,
Like,
you got a
yeah,
dog and didn't realize it was gonna grow?
especially a giant breed dog like him. Like,
Yeah.
you got a Saint Bernard Great Pyrenees mix. Like, pardon? Like, literally, they're the two biggest dogs you can get.
Oh my
There's not very
gosh.
many dogs that you can get bigger than these two, and you're upset that he got too big. Like, but yeah, so like, that's kind of where Bone came from, and I don't understand how no one else picked him up. Like, he just big chills. He sleeps like 23 hours a day.
Oh my
It's insane.
gosh.
He's the biggest chill dog I've ever met. Bailey, lunatic, absolute lunatic. Like,
She's a puppy though, right?
oh yeah.
Okay.
I think she turns 7 months next week, so she's still super young, like 100%, but like, lunatic. Lunatic. I love her to death, but she's a lunatic.
What kind of dog is she?
She's the same as Bone. They're both Great Pyrenees Saint Bernard mixes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is like super weird. Like, I adopted them both, and they're just the exact same breed somehow.
Oh wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, they're both beautiful. I highly recommend people go and search through and find them on your Instagram because they're so fun.
Yeah, they're a good time, that's for sure.
Yeah. One of the other things that when I started following you a while back, that I was really impressed with and excited to see was your work with campaigns to end violence against women. And it looks like it's through the football team. So could you tell me a little bit more about that? I work and have worked as an advocate for survivors. So seeing, again, those intersections of that work coming from athletes, from male athletes, like it makes a huge difference and a huge influence on people.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually pretty interesting because I just didn't know much about it before I started this program. So I come from a family where, you know, my parents are both married and have a good marriage, and I lived
Mm-hmm.
a relatively sheltered childhood in Niagara Falls. It just nothing really bad ever happened.
Right.
I wasn't really exposed to a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to Winnipeg and they asked me, they're like, hey, do you want to be a part of this program? You know, only a couple of guys on the team do it or selected to do it. And they're like, we think you would, you know, you'd do well and you can do, like, you should do this. So I said, yeah, sure. Like, it seems like a good opportunity. It's, if nothing else, I'll learn something. And,
Right.
you know, we get to, travel, like part of the program is we travel to northern Manitoba and give these talks.
Okay.
And like, well, at the least I'll get to travel to northern Manitoba and see a really cool part of the country that most people don't ever get to see.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started doing this program, and I started getting trained on them, trained on the subject and trained on everything happening. And I'm like, oh wow, like I never realized how bad the situation was just because of how sheltered I'd been. So, you know, through the training, I learned a lot, and it really became a lot, you know, more impactful for me to be a part of this program. And then, so how the program works is we go and talk to high school age kids all around Manitoba. We've reached well over 10,000 kids now.
Oh, wow.
And we talk to them about, you know, a lot about the violence or not the violence, but the importance of language, how your language, what you allow to say, what you make jokes about, how that one impacts your peers, like the men around you, and how they perceive women, and how that can go from, you know, making jokes and just making derogatory remarks about women, and how that can escalate, and it keeps kind of going, right? It's on a spectrum. Like, yeah, like in high school, it's just jokes, but you know, as you move forward in life, that it kind of escalates. And then, you know, similarly, we talk about the impacts on women.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like, you know, at the end of the day, every single one of us comes from a woman. Like,
Yeah.
it's, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, we all came from a woman. So how demeaning it is, and how it leads to this culture of violence towards them. And yeah, just the thing is, like, just because you're not perpetrating the violence, just because you're not hitting them, just because you're not, you know, sexually assaulting them, if it kind of ties into like almost everything that's going on right now, is like, if you're just standing there, if you're just not doing anything about it, if you're letting those jokes slide, if you're letting them talk about women like that, it all compounds and it snowballs. And that's where it comes down to. And that's where I thought it was really interesting, because I never had that information growing up. You know, like some of it, like just like the vegan thing, like, yeah, like it's common sense now for me. It's just like, wow, I should have known this. Like, these are things you just should have known, when you're 16, like 18, whatever. But like, it was like never talked about. It was never taught in school. It was never talked about amongst peer groups. It was never talked about with your parents. And like, I'm not the only one. It's all the guys that do the program kind of go through the same thing. And like, that's not to say that our parents were bad. It just wasn't a thing. It just, like, it's not that it wasn't happening, but it was just wasn't a thing anyone ever talked about. But that's kind of how we got into this situation. So that's kind of where we come in, and we're opening those conversations. We're talking about it, and, you know, we're standing and we're saying, hey, like, women, we're with you. We understand there's a problem. We're trying to help. And to men, like, we need to do better. Like, this is our problem. This isn't like a women's problem. It's not like, you know, women can wear whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. They can drink however much they want. That doesn't mean, you know, we are entitled to do whatever we want to them. Like, that's not how this works, right? So it's kind of like it's standing with women, and then also trying to teach young men that this is how to live a better life, and how to break the cycle. That's the whole thing, is breaking the cycle, and that's kind of what we're trying to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a really interesting journey. I've learned a lot of really amazing things. I've heard stories of a lot of definitely very painful things that I wish I never had to hear, because I wish they just never happened.
Right.
I'm thankful that I was able to hear them and listen and be there for somebody. But I just I wish that it was not a thing. Like, I just wish this wasn't happening. And especially when you're hearing stories of girls that are 15, and you're like, man, like, how is this happening? Like you're 15.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Like the biggest thing you should be worrying about at 15 is like what you're gonna wear to school, not like not some of the shit like they have to deal with. And I'm just like, man, like fuck, like. So it's been really eye-opening experience, but I'm definitely very glad that I was able to do this and continue to do it.
It's really important work, and it's so great to hear you reframe that, speaking to men and young boys and talking about how to get involved. Because when I did this work on a college campus, it feels like an easier entry point to talk about that. We called it like the pyramid of sexism, kind of what you're talking about, the spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's like when you talk to people, an automatic response is to want to talk about why you're not like that, right? So it's like, well, I don't abuse anyone. I'm not a rapist or whatever it is. And it's like, yes, that's great, but also it's connected to all these other things. And so I think that that's really such an important way to approach it and be like, great, I know I'm not accusing you of that, but what about these other things? And like, look how they're connected. It's really important work.
No, for sure. So, and that's exactly it. Right. And that's why I'm so, fortunate to be a part of this program and have such great facilitators, because, like, I would love to be able to take all the credit and be like, oh yeah, this is all like all me. But, at the end of the day, it wasn't like I got trained on this. Like I got, we had facilitators come in and kind of guide us through, help us with a presentation, help us with what that looked like, what to say. And so, I'm very fortunate. I had a really great facilitators to enable me to do this. So.
Can you tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel? It's been really fun to watch your, like, what you eat in a day videos. And I think one of the things I really like about it is it's so approachable. Because some of the videos on YouTube, if you Google like vegan eat in a day, some of them are beautiful. But if you were just starting out, they would be so like, why? That's of my wheelhouse. I can't do that. But what I love about your videos is it's fun. But two, it just feels like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's interesting because I actually never, just like the food blog, I never wanted to start YouTube. I was like a huge, it was a huge thing for me. I did not want to start YouTube, but when I met Candace, the reason me and Candace met was I want to take an old school bus, renovate it into an RV, and drive across Canada visiting dog shelters with my dogs.
I'm renovating an old school bus right now
into really?
A tiny home on wheels. Yes.
That's amazing. You'll have to show me pictures because it's like a huge dream of mine to do this. But obviously with football and everything else, it's been hasn't been able to take a priority in my life yet.
Mm-hmm.
One day I hope so, but right now it just hasn't. So it was just kind of a dream of mine. And I posted on Instagram one day, and I had all these people like messaging me about it. And all of a sudden, like the edgy veg like messaged me about it. And like she wasn't even following me or anything. She messaged me and she's just like, oh, hey, like I love this idea. I'd love to talk to you more about it. And I'm like what? Like, who are you? I've only been vegan for like 8 months at that point. And I'm like, who is this? And like, I never watched YouTube. So I was like,
right.
So I go to her profile. I'm like, oh wow, she makes really good food actually. It's
impressive.
I'm like, oh, fair. I'm like, well, at the very least, maybe I'll get a good meal out of this. So like, so I'm like, I was in Winnipeg at the time. She's obviously in Toronto. So I'm like, well, I'm coming home for a bye week in a couple weeks. Like, we can kind of meet up in Toronto then. So we did, and we talked about it. And she that's kind of how our friendship grew. But one of the things was she wanted to help me do this because she's a huge advocate for dogs as well. And so she's like, I love this idea. I really want to help you do it. I'd love to kind of see this flourish. But how we want to do it basically is we want to get it sponsored by somebody. So we want like Pet Value to sponsor us. So we get, kind of everything paid for. And then we would get like donations from Pet Value to give to every dog rescue we go to. So it's not like, just like, look at us, we're driving around going to dog rescues. That's kind of, it's like a very pretentious thing. That's kind of like how we were looking at it. But like Candace is like, if we want to get a big enough sponsor and do this correctly, like if we want Pet Value or we want, whatever, like Purina dog food, whatever, like a huge sponsor to do this, to make this big and have the biggest impact, we have to get the biggest sponsor. She's like, you have to increase your social media following. At the time I had like 6,000 followers on Instagram. I had no YouTube. I had like 1,000 followers on Twitter. Social media was like, it was always kind of just like, whatever, like it's
something you were doing, but
yeah, it's like all my friends had Instagram and I just posted pictures of me playing football on it. Like that's, like it was never like a thing for me.
Yeah.
And she's like, you need to get on YouTube if you want to do this. And like, I literally fought her. Like I think I published my first video on like in January and we met in October. So I fought her from October to January on starting a YouTube channel. And like we fought like all the time about this. And finally I caved and I started it. And like my whole thing is like I'm just like I said before, like I have a job, like I play football, like I'm not like some influencer, like I'm not an actual influencer, I'm not an actual YouTuber. Like I'm just me. I'm just some guy. And like I understand
that's the best part.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So I'm like, that's my thing. Like a lot of people always say, they're like, oh, like you should be more energetic. You should like do all these crazy recipes. I'm like, yeah, that's not like who I am though. Like I'm like I don't get like fired up, and I'm not gonna like fake getting fired up for the video. Cause like it's not that I don't care, but like it's not me. So like no. And like I said, like I don't like necessarily need this for like
yeah
anything, really. Like it'd be sweet if we got a sponsor to sponsor this bus trip, but like other than that, it's just a passion project for me. So like I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not on the internet. And from there, so like I just kind of like show what I do in a day, and some people seem to find it interesting, which is fun because like a lot of my meals, especially like when I started like 2 years ago, like I wasn't super into food, like making my own recipes and stuff like that. So I was kind of just like, here's my shitty oatmeal bowl. It's really delicious and cooking, but it looks terrible. And like people loved it. Like people, were just like, they didn't really care. I mean, obviously it didn't, like it hasn't like blown up or anything, probably because my food doesn't look great. It's to market shitty looking food, but for me it's not like a big deal. It's not something I just don't care about how many subscribers I have. I have a bunch of people that message me and tell me how much the videos help them and how much what I talk about helps. So the followers and the subscribers that don't always go with it, it's not really a big deal to me. It's just kind of like, at least if I'm having an impact, that's all I really care about.
Right, for sure. My word for 2020 is authenticity. And I think you just like really perfectly described, like, no, I'm not going to be something I'm not. And that's probably why I enjoy your channel. Cause like you can feel, and not that a lot of influencers or whatever don't have great intentions, but you can feel when it's not authentic and you can feel when it is. And so your authenticity and just being like, here's my oatmeal, or you do make, you do make good food, so don't sell yourself too short.
Yeah,
But,
well,
you
lately I
know, or
have.
just like, here's my day and like, this is why I'm eating this, or this is what I did for, you know, being a pro athlete and what I eat in a day, or like all those things are authentic to you and you can feel that.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it. Like I'm just like the reason I started was just to like help people, and like
Right.
that's all I really care about. So I'm not like I said, like I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm just like whatever.
Well, you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
So just a few questions to wrap up here. What do you do to slow down and become present, or like take time for yourself? Like, what does that look like? And is it evolved over time?
Nope. um, Obviously, spending times with my dogs and just like being outside with them is a huge thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of just like an obvious answer. But if I'm like winding down, I watch cartoons. I watch like a lot of cartoons. It's always for some reason been my thing. Like even in like high school, I was watching like SpongeBob SquarePants. So like that, like anybody that ever hates on SpongeBob, like is a fool. Like that show is like it's gold. It's honestly so good. It's super underrated.
Anybody who's hating on it is lying. They're
Yeah,
just
exactly.
like,
Right.
it's closeted.
Yeah, and people just hate on him because of his voice. But I'm like, man, you actually like that. Like that's my problem. That's my problem with people that hate on cartoons. Is they're like they always just think they automatically assume it's childish because like it's a cartoon,
Mm,
right? But I'm like
because it's animated.
yeah, it gets animated, right? And I'm like, but like here's the thing, like cartoons are better because you can actually focus on the storyline and the underlying like message of the episode.
Hmm.
You don't have to worry about like shitty actors and shitty actors. And like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
A shitty actor can absolutely ruin a message or ruin the tone of an episode or
that's a
a
good
movie,
point.
right? Like with cartoons, it's impossible. Like unless you have like a shitty graphic designer, but like which
I love the passion that's coming through for you right
I
now.
I
You're
get
like
fired up
fired
about it.
up.
Like I just like cartoons are like where it's at. Like
So, what have I not asked you, if anything, that you think people should know about you?
I don't know. I was pretty open. I talked about a lot.
Yeah, you don't have to have an answer. I just want to make sure there's space if you're like, I really wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. Just like, like just be nice to each other, man. Like I think that's like I see even sometimes I get like a lot of DMs or comments and stuff like that, and it doesn't bother me. I'm a grown ass man. Like, people say whatever they want to me, but you go to some other people's sites. Sometimes I go on Candace's YouTube, and I'll be leaving a comment, and I'll see some other comments, and just like some of the hate you see, on the internet. I think a lot of people forget that there's another person at
Mm,
the other end that they're like that are like receiving that,
yeah,
and it's just like, man, like if you didn't like the video, just like move on. Like
yeah.
what why do you gotta like why you gotta like why you gotta be like that? Like one of my friends posted on a story the other day. He posted a picture of him and his boyfriend for because it's Pride Month, obviously. And
Mm-hmm.
so he posted a picture of him and his boyfriend, and then he screenshot some of the comments he was getting, and like he was getting hate on his like picture of him and his boyfriend. They were like, like it was talking about like how the Bible says this and blah blah blah, and like how it's not
Oof.
great. And like I just went on, I was just telling people to fuck off, like
Yeah.
get the fuck out of here. Like what's wrong with you? Like seriously, like if you're so bothered by this, like why are you looking at this?
Yeah,
Like what's
move
wrong
on.
with you? Like just like get out of here. Like
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like that shit frustrates me. So it's just like just like be better, like be nicer. Just ever like I feel like I never understood it because like I'm just like, man, just like why can never not just be nicer to each other?
Mm-hmm.
But like that's kind of not the world we live in, right? So that's the one thing I could say to everybody. It would just be be nicer to each other. too
That's
much.
a damn good message.
Yeah, there's already too much shit going on in the world. You don't need.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
what's happening.
especially right now.
Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, that would be my message.
Well, I appreciate that message. So where can people find you, connect with you?
My Instagram is at JohnRush5. That's probably the easiest. They can, if they want to go on Twitter, it's JohnRush32 because I changed my football number, so I had to change my Instagram, my Twitter handle. The food blog will be up shortly. It's set to release right now on July 16th, so that's like 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks away, depending on when you're listening to this. And that's called
I was gonna say it'll be.
Kitchen. And then if you want to watch my YouTube, you can just search John Rush on YouTube, and then I'll pop up.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. This was a great episode to start things off, and I look forward to connecting with you more.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks. I'm happy I got on and was able to connect with you and talk about this stuff.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you enjoyed that episode and don't want to miss any in the future, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. See you next week.